Welcome back to the Poultry Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Blayne Mozeshek. Each week, we bring you board-certified veterinary guidance to help your flock thrive. Let's head to the coop. Welcome back to the Poultry Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Blayne Mozeshek, and today we're in Austin meeting with Lauren, talking about Linda and looking at some feathering issues. So Lauren was concerned about feather quality and more specifically these two spots, right, basically on the elbow of the wing. And you can see they're red and inflamed. Both sides look very similar, but you also notice just overall her feathering is kind of poor. So Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit maybe how it started and some history behind it?
Yeah, I noticed this probably about 8 or 9 months ago. First started with these two little red spots, these cherries, and some stripping along her wings. I couldn't figure out what it was, so I tried mite treatments, some Elector PSP,
yep.
And it didn't do much. I've also given her multiple baths. I've gotten rid of coops, all of the above, and I've seen no change. And so that's whenever I reached out to you. Help me, please, Linda. I don't know what's going on.
Tell us a little bit about what you're feeding.
So right now I am feeding a soy-free, grain-free, like non-GMO, no corn feed. I'm also mixing in a bunch of different herbs because I was thinking internal parasites. So a lot of chili pepper and some scratch and mealworms too.
Okay. So how many chickens do you have total?
So I have 6 total.
Okay.
And she's really the only one that's going through this. Now she has what I would consider her twin sister, who has a little bit of feather stripping, but she's fluffy, she's white, she's beautiful.
And then you mentioned, so you've got the feed, the organic, soy-free, corn-free feed, and then you're giving some scratch too, right? So what's your ratio of those feeds versus like even the mealworms too? Like?
Yeah, so for the ratio, I do 3 large scoops with my little scooper to half a scoop of scratch and half a scoop of worms.
Okay. And you broadcast on the ground, or you're putting it in that feeder?
I'm putting it in the feeder,
okay.
yes.
Okay, and you do that daily? Got it, okay. Awesome, well thank you for the history, and we're gonna dive into that and see what we can figure out.
I did used to have a rooster, so for the longest time I thought that, okay, all of this is because of the rooster, but I'm not seeing any like pen feathers coming through.
Right.
And her vent doesn't seem dirty, but it doesn't seem clean either. I've given her baths, given her antifungals too.
And what was on the wing you were saying?
So these pen feathers are not pushing through. They look like almost like little blackheads. And I've done, how was it, Elector? PSP. I've also done antifungal treatment on it. I gave her, like I said, a handful of baths. Really thought it was mites.
So depluming mites, they kind of start around the back end, kind of over the top. It's hard to tell because those are also the same places where, like behaviorally, like other birds will peck. And sometimes it's a combination of the two. Actually, they'll self kind of trauma too because it's irritating and they're trying to peck out. They end up pulling their own feathers out. Not as often, or honestly, I don't know if I've seen it where it's like one focused spot.
Yeah.
So when I first saw the picture, I was thinking maybe this is like an ingrown feather follicle. And it's like a soft spot right in there.
Yeah.
But I don't see like one defined spot either. And you've probably seen that video where we talk about the sulfur amino acids and how they're important in like feather development. So that's a possibility. So when I look at the feathers, they're obviously like they're pretty, like they're breaking, right? They're brittle. Now, it's not like they heal themselves either, right? So you'd have to like wait for the next, round of feathers essentially to come in, which would be like in the fall most likely. And how much scratch are you giving like relative to the other feed?
The ratio would be like 3 scoops of feed to half a scoop for scratch.
So that's probably more than you need to be giving. The one way to kind of rule that out is just to do away with the scratch.
Yeah.
The mealworm's not as important. They're calorie-wise, there's a lot, and they're like 50% fat. And I'm wondering, you can see that the feathers are broken off right at the skin.
And they haven't grown.
So now I'm wondering if she's like rubbing up against something when she...
Yeah, so this is actually a brand new coop. And she sleeps in here, so they all kind of are split up now. Some of them roost on top of there, but Linda always roosts right here.
Okay. And she nests in the nest box like all the rest. Again, you always wonder okay, well, is she somehow allergic or reactive to whatever other things that you're putting in there, right? But none of the others have anything similar to this, right?
No, none of them.
And they're laying fine.
Which she may be not laying as much as I'm used to her laying.
And you think that's her doing it to herself?
Yes, I've seen them do it, where they're grabbing at the feather and they're kind of stripping it, like over cleaning themselves.
So one thing, maybe you've heard me talk about it from like the nutritional deficiency standpoint. I'll look over here. So like you'll find, if there really is like one of those sulfur deficiencies, a good test is like you can pluck a few feathers, like little, like I said, little down feathers, and you just sprinkle them like they were feed. And when you do have one of those nutritional, especially the sulfur deficiencies, they will just come like it's scratch or putting on the ground, just clean them right out. But again, I see one there, and there's some over there, so I don't think that's the issue. And what are you feeding?
So it's this local brand that's like soy-free, grain-free, and then I've been mixing herbs in there too, which is like fairly recently I went really heavy on the herbs.
Yeah.
Because again, I thought she had a parasite or anything. My other hens, like when I look at the gray ones, look happy and healthy. They don't have a single feather issue, and same with my bantams.
And so that feed that you're feeding, is it a combination of scratch and pellets, or is it?
No, I bought the scratch and I've mixed it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How long has this been going on?
A while.
Okay. I don't like the soy-free, corn-free stuff.
Yeah.
When you look at soy, like from a nutritional standpoint, I mean, that's why it's fed to essentially every farm animal, because the amino acid profile is really good, especially for chickens. So those methionine, cysteine, lysine are pretty high, and they don't require supplementation of those for the most part. Corn can kind of go either way. There are other like carbohydrate-based grains. Soy is more like protein, fat that it adds to the diet, so energy standpoint. When you take those out, especially soy, now you go, okay, what are we going to put in there to replace it? So something that's high protein, where's the fat coming from? And it's like kelp meal, other types of fats, like animal or vegetable fats, which aren't terrible from the fat standpoint, but a lot of those, like the kelp, for instance, is high in salt, which can cause them to like flush more. You see more watery droppings, we see more dirty vents. That's the only thing they have to eat it essentially, but I see this more often in the, especially soy-free, corn-free, non-GMO type diets. And why it affects one versus the other, you know, they can have differences in how well they absorb things and their age, and I mean, there's all kinds of independent variables that they could potentially have, but yeah, typically I see it in those. Now, and I say too, like those feeds are marketed and blended for people and not for the chickens.
I see.
Because
we don't want to eat soy, and we don't want to eat vegetable oils.
Right. So my suggestion here, like I thought I was coming here and we'd find a cyst or ingrown follicle. It's on both sides, which doesn't make sense if that's what it is. Just the quality of the feathers, like they're not very good in terms of like they're obviously brittle, they're breaking.
Yeah.
And in here, they're not coming back in. The suggestion I would have would be not like overnight, but transition back to just a standard conventional feed.
Okay.
And see what that does. But you're gonna have to give it like through the end of the year, right? So they'll go into molt. They're obviously making feathers then at the same time. You know, as a owner, you're like, well, I only have so many options when it comes to feed.
Yeah.
As far as, I mean, there's 1,000 brands, right? But really, you can make changes on the protein content. And then obviously you can make changes on what it contains as far as, or doesn't contain, right? Soy, corn, whatever. For the protein, everybody's like, oh, more is better. So the higher the protein, the more water, again, that's in there. That's associated with the droppings. So you get water droppings that way. If you put on top of that the kelp meal, that's typically higher in salt. Just kind of compounding things. Yeah. But the point of that was they're going to be developing these feathers. The feathering's not great. So you're giving a little bit higher protein. So 16 is kind of the bottom, be like 16 to 18 would be probably the window that they would need to be in. You could go up higher, 18-20% versus down to the 16. The thing too is when I'll make that recommendation to people, they'll like, well, they're laying fewer eggs. And that may be possible, but it's like, okay, what's your goal here? Is it to like produce as many eggs as possible? Because there's also benefits of laying not quite so many eggs, because one of the bigger issues we have is reproductive stuff. And if we can not lay an egg as often, we limit the amount of reproductive issues we'll have later too. So as far as like adding more of those treats to give more energy, more fat, more calories, that's always not a great thing either, because when they start adding more weight on, there's not a whole lot of space back here, right, to lay an egg. And so they start building up fat because they hold their, like back here is a fat pad. Yeah. And that just starts taking up space. So that'll cause reproductive issues, right? There's just not the space to get the egg through. All the point of that is, I know it sounds like you're you're going to be a bad grower. You're not giving the treats and whatnot, and that's
She'll
actually
be very
probably,
upset. She's not like
it's probably a good thing that we restrict them just a little bit. I can tell you she's plenty healthy. She doesn't she's not hurting for food, so I'm not worried there. And the thing too is, like, you make these feed changes and it's not like we're going to see a result tomorrow. It's going to be months really to kind of work through it all.
Yeah.
So again, that goes back to like just behavioral. Like they may just go after, just fill up on the scratch.
That's what she 100%
not eat the other
does.
stuff. Yeah. So that fits, right? In regards to like the chili flake and stuff.
Yes.
The actives there, when they're extracted, they can have positive effects, right? If you look at the literature, there's papers out there that say, okay, the capsaicin and other things within that chili flake, it obviously influences their egg color. That's 100% true, right? It gives it, the chili especially adds that orange kind of color. But there are other articles that will say that it actually can cause inflammation in the gut, just like people. You eat a super hot diet, even though you can handle it, it's, maybe it is hot to us, it's not hot to them, but that doesn't mean it doesn't cause some of the other GI issues, right?
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot of research on that, but there are papers out there to support to say that does happen. And if you look at it, they're extracts of those for the most part that are going to have any effect. So if you just go feed oregano, one, depending on what oregano it is, there could be way different levels of the active. So it's like carvacol and thymol are the two active components of that have the beneficial effects. A huge range in terms of just which oregano you're using.
Yeah.
And they also break down pretty quickly. So like if you go to the HEB and you go buy dried oregano, it's most likely most of it's gone. So
oh man, that's what I've been giving them.
yeah. But now you can like have the extracts, like there's pharmaceutical extracts that are stabilized, right, that you can give through the water. Those are some of the products that we're going to try to bring to the market. And they are, again, they're stabilized. You can mix them, they're water miscible, and they have science behind them. They're not just going to the store and buying herbs. So not that it's going to be a bad thing, like giving those, right? So you're not hurting anything, but you're also not having those
the benefit.
Deworming, anthelmintic is what they're called, effects, And I know like you want to provide what's best, and not to say that you're certainly trying.
There's no guide.
Yeah.
Going off what the internet says is the healthiest.
Right.
And like, honestly, like whatever ChatGPT says is going to help my chicken, whatever blend and ratio I need. And it's just kind of now based off these really great marketing tactics.
Totally. And they're being marketed towards people, right? And not the
and
birds,
we don't know,
And that's what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Prevent or correct some of that misinformation. And I'll say like ChatGPT, Google, there's so much crap out there.
Yeah, and it just pulls from the internet.
And again, I totally get it that you're just trying to do what you can with the information they have available and with good intention. And unfortunately, in cases where the information's bad, it ends up causing things like this. So hopefully we can get her back on the straightened out and beautiful again.
I hope so.
Yeah. Lauren, thanks for sharing today. I think we covered some really great information. We've seen this before, where the particular diet that we have, and I know as an owner, you're trying to do everything you can with good intentions to really feed your flock what appears to be healthy and what you've heard online is healthy. But in many cases, what we find is that the marketing is more towards the owner and what we think is good rather than to our flocks and what is good for them. In this case, the corn-free, soy-free, it's not the first time we've seen this where those diets just aren't doing what they need to for the bird, right?
Yeah.
Whatever particular ingredient it is. I know there were some dirty vents in her case, right? We've talked about in the past that kelp meal, which is often used as a replacement for soy, can have a lot of salt in it, right? And so that adds liquid or more moisture to the droppings, so we can see dirty vents from that. Sometimes they'll pick through and get just the scratch, which is sounds like that's what she's doing as a dominant one. She's going after all the scratch, which means she's not filling up on those pellets or crumbles that are in that corn-free, soy-free diet, and she's just not getting the level of nutrition that she needs to really form good, beautiful, healthy feathers, right? And so that's why we see the poor feather quality that we have here, where they're breaking, they're brittle, and So the suggestion was to Lauren that she transition over 5 to 7 days to just a conventional, probably a little bit higher protein, because we do want to support feather growth. So, our baseline typically would be in the 16 to 18% protein for layers. She'll probably shift to like an 18 to 20% protein. And this is not a solution we're not gonna see a result tomorrow. It's gonna take a couple months. And my my information to her was that it's probably going to be as they go into molt, like later in the fall and maybe into the winter, that we'll really start to see that feather growth come back. So as these feathers are replaced. So yeah, that was our suggestion today. We also talked about some of the supplements that you're giving in regards to chili and oregano, and that while those do have some effects, positive effects, if we look at the literature, it's often the extracts of those that are really providing the benefit, and maybe not so much from a anti-mite or mite treatment or worm treatment, but have some positive GI effects. But again, it's going to be the extracts and not the actual just whole oregano or whole chili. And we also talked about how potentially those chili flakes can irritate the GI tract, right? So while chickens can't taste the heat, they don't have the sensor to pick up chili is hot, their intestinal tract can be irritated. There's some data out there to show that it does cause inflammation, which can also cause maybe not so great absorption of nutrients, which again kind of compounds all this stuff, right? So really cool case today. And you know what, I thought we were going to come out here and look at a infected or ingrown feather follicle. Really turns out to be nutrition, so I can put away all my fun toys to play with. But again, I really do appreciate you sharing the story and letting us come out. And again, Lauren, any last questions or good?
No, thank you so much for coming out and solving my like year-long problem. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And beautiful place, by the way. I love the Coop.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks everybody for joining. I'm Dr. Blayne Mozeshek with thepoultrydoc.com. Visit us at thepoultrydoc.com, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.